The Mortal Instruments is a quote from Shakespeare. It's Julius Caesar, the genius in the mortal instruments. It's a speech about sort of a feeling of unrest. I think with the second book especially with fantasy, what you're doing is you've sort of established the world a bit in the first book, and now you're fleshing it out. You're telling people more about it and giving it extra layers and depth, and you're also raising the stakes. So in the first book, we find out, vampires and fairies and warlocks are real. In the second book, we start to really get to know these creatures as people. We get to know the warlock Magnus Bane, who's one of the, sort of the fan favorite characters of the series, who's a warlock. And we start to kind of understand, how warlock powers work, how they're different from shadow hunters. Simon, our little beloved Simon, becomes a vampire. He dies and is reborn, which I think, was a big surprise for most people, but pulls us more into that world. We flesh out the Silent City, the Silent Brothers, and most specifically, we flesh out the mythology around Clare, who her parents were. Her father is this guy Valentine, who's very, I don't even want to say evil, misguided. He has a plan. He believes the shadow hunters have gone off course, that they've become corrupt. He has an idea of how to sort of course correct them. Of course, it's going to require killing a lot of people because that's just how it goes. So we learn a lot more about him. We learn that she and Jace, share the father and mother, that they're brother and sister, that they have this sort of like shared background. That Valentine, like, Claire's never met Valentine before, but Valentine raised Jace, so he knows him well. And so we start to see the thing that I think makes people sort of connect to and lock in with the Jace character, which is this battle that he has with his feelings for his father as he, raised him, as he loves him, and his realization that his father is a bad person and that his vision for the future is a bad one. So I think one of the things that's fun about second books for writers is you are layering on new aspects of the world, how it works, how the Shadowhunter government works, and then also new aspects of these characters and the things they have to contend with. And so that was the idea that we had, and that was the sort of the fun we had of sort of creating this a very intricately built, underground system of caves, magic school. And also the idea of, well, what if you find out that you are, in fact, the reincarnation of a famous, mythological figure, but you're the bad guy? What do you do?
And there you went. So over the Iron Trial, the Copper Gauntlet, there's 5 of these. Golden Tower, of course, owns it. Did you have any particular favorite characters that you invented for the series that you brought to the table, or that you two co-created? I don't know, over the course of the 5?
We co-created everything, so there's nothing that's mine or Holly's. We worked on everything together, but I think we had a lot of fun with Cal, who is the main character. He's just very snarky, very sarcastic. He has sarcastic comments about everything that you could possibly imagine. And there's also a character called Aaron, who is the one who is the chosen hero, but he's a complex and conflicted character, but it was fun to write him because often writing very good characters can be kind of boring. So we were like, how do we layer Aaron, make him more interesting? He has like a background of car thievery and Grand Theft Auto. And so we were like, how do we make him different? We don't just want him to be this sort of flat, like, I'm a good guy character. We want him to be a lot more complex than that.
Did you wind up with a favorite book of the 5?
I think for me, my favorite book is The Golden Tower, the last one. I like a last book. I mean, it's sort of like what you were talking about before, is like you've set everything up and now you get to pay it out. And there's something very satisfying about that.
What within wrapping it up were any 2 or 3 key beats you two really wanted to, like, kind of punches you wanted to go out swinging with, I suppose?
Well, we want to really lean into like Cal being the bad guy. And then also in the earlier book, the book right before that, Aaron dies. So you're in this situation where you're like, well, the hero that's supposed to save the world is dead. And all you've got is the villain who's supposed to destroy everything. And I don't want to totally spoil it, but it's basically like, well, what do you do in a world where, we know we want the world to continue turning and we don't want everybody to die. What do you do when the only person left who can save you is the bad guy?
So, what was it like? I've had 2 go to script. I adapted one of them myself with the widow of the country singer, and then neither of them, we lost our funding with COVID for one, and the other, thank God, it never got off the ground. But to you, to see this both become a TV series and a film, and it wasn't just there was starts and stops with the TV series, especially till it got straight to order, kind of, which is rare. What talk about that? Seeing what come out of your imagination now here projected up on a movie screen in a TV series, and that enters into the Buffy arena of now. And they're not companion books. That's the great part. They were your original work, so that must have felt pretty surreal, I would guess.
It is surreal, especially I think since, I have this weird background in entertainment reporting, and also my grandfather was a film producer. So I was like, oh, here I am sort of being sucked back into that Hollywood world that I actually know a lot about the business side. Like, and so it definitely felt, I think for a lot of people, it's baffling, when this stuff happens, because suddenly your book is part of this massive machine that churns out entertainment and doesn't work at all like publishing. It's completely different. Publishing, you write the book, you turn it in, it's your book. Movies, TV, they're team productions. Many, many people work on it. And you hear from all sorts of levels. And also, like, it would be as if when you turned in your book, you didn't just get notes from your editor, but you got notes from the financial department of the publisher, because that is how movies and TV work. The money people, they give you notes, and you have to pay attention. The studio people, they give you notes. So, and I mean, I personally was not writing the scripts or anything like that for either the movie or the TV show, but I was watching sort of the whole process. So there was, I was sort of worried a little bit at the time, like, do I know too much about this? Is this going to kind of make it a less magical experience, because I'm sort of sitting there being like, I know how they know all the little like pieces of, how and why you hire certain actors and why you film in certain places and all the tax breaks that are the things that guide so many aspects of the production. But I remember then the first day that I got to set, which was in Toronto, and they were like, well, come on in and look at the set. And I was like, oh my God, they've completely recreated my book. Like, here's Clary's bedroom, here's Simon's bedroom, here's the Hunter's Moon, which is a werewolf bar, and here is, the Institute, was this massive like church with this, amazing interior, and the City of Bones itself. And so that was actually a really magical experience. And I spent a lot of time on set, just kind of like wandering from place to place and like hanging out in the rooms. I'm not going to say we were one of the first. I was just very surprised when I got a call from the production company, and they were like, we're making a TV show. And I was like, you're not making another movie? And they're like, we're making a TV show. Okay. Like, as the writer, you don't get any say in how that works. So I was just like, all right, I guess we'll see how it is as a television show. And it was the television show and the movie are very, very, very different. And it was really interesting and weird to see how it was reimagined for the TV show. It is I think both exciting and scary, in the sense that, I have worked in the Shadowhunter world that I created for so long now. And by the time it's done, it'll have been 20 years, which is, unusual in writing. It's rare that you can create a world where you can, continue to write in that world and continue to create new stories and continue to have this readership that's excited for those stories and wants to read them. And so I feel like it will almost be like leaving a family behind, or leaving, like a hometown behind, and striking off, for new frontiers. And I'm excited for that. I'm also, a little bit freaked out about it. I did just finish my first adult book, which is called Swordcatcher, and is, a completely different world. I will hold it up. And it was very interesting to step away from Shadowhunters in order to write it, because, like I said, it was like leaving your hometown and going to live in a new city and having to get to know all new people and create a new community, because I didn't know these characters and I didn't know their world that well when I started it. I had an outline, I had some ideas about what I wanted to do. I was really, all right, so we all have like junkie TV that we watch, right? I'm going to assume that you also have junkie TV that you watch, and you not only watch like, Oscar-winning documentaries. So
Almost
so
none.
So I really love this show called Locked Up Abroad, which is, I think, a National Geographic show about people who wind up in prison overseas and have to escape. And I don't know why I love it. I just do. And I'm watching this episode, and it's about this guy who it was taken out of, he was he's an Iraqi. He was taken out of the Iraqi army and brought to Saddam Hussein's palace and told, you are going to, you look a little bit like Uday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's son. We're going to do plastic surgery on you. We're going to teach you to walk and talk like Uday. You are going to stand in for him. Because, you know, a lot of people don't maybe like him all that much. We don't want him to be assassinated. So you're going to go to all of these, you know, medal giving, you know, ceremonies and public appearances, and you're going to pretend to be him. And he was like, I don't, this seems really dangerous. And they're like, yeah, it's your job. You're just a, you know, you're a bullet catcher. Like, you catch bullets for the prince. He's basically the prince. And so, you know, he does go through this whole process of learning to talk like this guy and walk like this guy and act like him and stand in for him. He really hates him. Like, much of it is about how Uday is this monster and he is basically with him all of the time and has to learn how to be like him. And what is it like to, you know, have to learn how to be a monster, basically. And I was just fascinated. I was like, this is just so interesting. And I love everything about it. And I fell down this rabbit hole of reading about famous doubles of like dictators and kings and throughout history. And a lot of them have had, you know, people who basically doubled for them in public. And so I thought, well, okay, what if, you know, I've been thinking about writing this high fantasy for a long time. What would it be like to have somebody who does that? That's their job. And, you know, in a fantasy world in which, you know, kings and queens have absolute power. And so this is about a boy named Kelly, and he's brought to the palace when he's just 10 years old. And he's told, you're going to live with the prince and you're going to walk like him, talk like him. We'll use magic to make people think that you are him, and you will stand in for him so that he does not, you know, he isn't murdered during any of these, during any assassination attempt. It's not the same story. You know, he really loves the prince like a brother. They've grown up together. They've slept in the same room. Connor, the prince, is not a terrible person like Uday Hussein, but it is definitely a story about someone who winds up being like, who am I? If I am constantly pretending to be someone else, no one knows my real name. No one knows me. No one speaks to me as Kelly and Saren, the person I am. I am only somebody else, always pretending to be someone that I'm not. And so who am I really? And then he is approached by the ragpicker king, who is sort of the head of the crime world of this city, Castellane, this magical, like, imaginary city. And he runs all the crime, all the gambling, all the prostitution, all the smuggling. And he comes to Kel, and he's like, what if you spy on the royal family for me? You have a unique position. You see everything. I need to know what's going on. And I will free you from being a sword catcher. I will give you a new and different life. And so that's really the challenge for him, is like, what do I do? Do I have my loyalty to this family that really, you know, that I've grown up with and that I love, but who are, you know, my job is to die. That's my only job. Or do I try to like free myself? So that's really the question at the heart of Swordcatcher.